Set. 4, 3, 1.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunday Morning Quarterback. We are a podcast today of 4 pastors who love ministry, leadership, and sports. It is great to be with you today, and this is one of my favorite days of the year, the day after the Super Bowl. We got a squad coming. Pastor, my brother-in-law, Patrick Everett, coming, youth pastor at First Baptist Fort Hill. Patrick, you doing all right today?
Yeah, doing great, man. How you guys?
Doing good. Adam finally picked my side, the Chiefs, coming from Richmond. Did you enjoy the game last night?
Yeah, I loved it. I'm a little unlike you, though. I don't like this day because there's no football for 8 months or so. So I don't know if I get excited about this day. But switching gears, it's college basketball time now, baby. So we'll ramp that up.
College basketball. Patrick's got his baseball shirt on. He's ready for baseball season. And Adam, you get a free lunch because I believe somebody bet you cheeseburgers on this Super Bowl bet and lost.
Yeah. I think it's 10 free lunches, 10 cheeseburgers. Wasn't that it? So that's like
I don't remember it or something like that.
That's like $100 gift card to Five Guys, I think.
I have so many wins over this past year, so I think Adam just kind of didn't into the win column.
Maybe he paid off his balance. Maybe that's
we'll call it even.
That's funny. Well, hey, let's get into it. Super Bowl, and by the way, we did a nice little thing where we let the people predict the scores at a chance to get a gift card, and we had some close people, but not close enough. So if you tried, thanks for participating, but maybe next time. But let's start at the top of the horn. Patrick, what was your Super Bowl reaction? What were your takeaways from the game? Did anything surprise you? What were your thoughts?
I really thought Eagles would handle business a little better than they did. I really thought they'd come out on top. I kind of thought that A.J. Brown would have a bigger game. Well, I'm a Titans fan, and listen, if I'd have traded him to the Eagles, I'd have got fired too. So I'd have fired myself. But I really thought he'd come, with a bigger game and be probably more of a game plan. And I think that there were some mistakes by that, but I also think that the Chiefs played well, and I think that their defense stepped up at the end. So, I mean, it's what it is.
Good. Adam, what were your thoughts? You finally came over at the end to the Chiefs side. Did the game go as you saw it would?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the thing that shocked me, as it did most people, is that all the last 2 weeks, it was all about Philly, their roster, top to bottom's better, and mainly that their defense was better. Where were they last night? They had no sacks, and Mahomes, I think the Chiefs only had the ball for like 24 minutes or something like that, and they scored on like 6 of 8 possessions, I think I saw. So that kind of shocked me. And then, looking back, this was a question. They weren't really tested all year long. And I think that ultimately was the deciding factor. Outside of Hurts' fumble, and then that was returned, of course, for a touchdown, I think that was the play of the game ultimately that decided it. So all that said, it was a great game. I'm still glad it was those two teams in the Super Bowl. It was just a great game from top to bottom. So, I think America enjoyed watching that. I
agree. Dad, you just been on the wrong side all year. What was your thoughts and takeaway from the game?
There was a lot. I thought Philly's offensive line could not block. They could not get the run game going. They could not throw the ball downfield in regards to 15, 20-yard passes. They had 2 nice long bombs. Other than that, they could not really get it downfield. And, Kansas City had a pretty good run game. Their running back is feisty. I mean, I like him a lot. And they were moving that defensive line backwards. They were running at will. And I really think it was the running game that predicated some passing. And he only, like I said, he had about 180 yards. And so it was a well-rounded game plan. I thought coaching was fantastic. They came back the second half, got some strategies going, some good plays. It was just a well-rounded game by the Chiefs. And even though the Philly was moving the ball pretty well in the first half, I noticed that even though they were getting work, they were still playing hard. And eventually they got some wrinkles figured out. with that passion, that desire that Kansas City was playing, and then the strategy changed. I thought it was just a good game plan, good overall win, offense, defense, special teams, and they came out the victor.
Well, I tried to tell you what was going to happen. What did I say a few weeks ago? They played a wounded animal. And, man, but I don't remember a game that was a tale of two halves, because when Mahomes got that ankle injury, I was like, oh, it's a wrap. And if it wasn't for that fumble, man, I mean, it could have been ugly. It could have been blowout city in the second half. But, man, in the second half, you see a lot of people complaining about that call, which I was reminded. Nobody said anything a few years back when Patrick Mahomes' first AFC championship and Tom Brady throws a pick, and they called that, he was lined up in the neutral zone by like half an inch. And so at the end of the day, if you're a Philly fan, Jim O'Neill, who was blowing our phones up, he was blowing it up in the first half, and then his heart slowly started breaking. We love you, Jim. We love you. But if you can't get a stop in the second half and you're that Eagles vaunted defense, and we saw that, we talked about it, Dak picked them apart on Christmas Eve. And so, but Jalen did. Jalen played really well. I mean, he played about as good as a game as he could have. And so very interesting. But I just want to throw Patrick. I told them about 6 months ago. I said, the Chiefs, and everybody's like, oh, they lost to Cheetah. And, hey, how do you think the Cheetah felt last night? And, man, they had a big old chip on their shoulder. And so I was happy for Andy. Super humble guy. And then Patrick Mahomes, too. He's like the Steph Curry of the NBA, just very selfless. And so if there is going to be a guy that takes the mantle as Tom moves on, as Adam talked about last week, I'm glad it's him. So
hey, I do want to add, there was a play that most people, I hadn't seen anybody talk about it, but I think it was the first drive. Philly was driving, and I think it was Miles Sanders, and he was like running towards the sideline. He got popped. And
yeah.
it was helmet on helmet, of course, more face mask, but man, we could hear the sound. You got to think from a psychological perspective, those players out there for Kansas City, man, they were already locked in. But when that happened, I feel like that really kind of excelled the big boys up front and their defenders. And I did forget to mention, as great as Mahomes was and is, as great as Kelsey is, there were a few plays last night. And I never coached football. I stopped playing it when I was in middle school. I could see, and I have very little knowledge of X's and O's. This was Andy Reid's hand in this. And some of those plays, a few of Mahomes' touchdowns where some guy just runs across the line before the snap and he's wide open, that was Andy Reid. And so congrats to him.
Yep. And, Mahomes didn't have some world beater game, but he did what he needed to do. He pushed through the adversity. And I felt like the Eagles couldn't quite finish the game. And then the Chiefs, it would have been interesting to see, though, if they wouldn't have called that penalty. And if they, probably would have, the Eagles could have come back and either taken the win or got the field goal. But, hey, the Chiefs deserved it, man. They battled back. Tyreek Hill was probably feeling in his feelings last night. But talking about Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick, I'll start with you. Do you think Patrick Mahomes, and this, as he's a young trailblazer, can one day eclipse Tom Brady, who's most to say the unequivocal GOAT currently?
Yes, and here for a couple of reasons why: A, talent; B, the roster. But I mean, even really, you look at the way Tom Brady was matched up with Bill Belichick, and they were great together. I feel like Tom and Bill were great together. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to be great together, and I think it's just going to. I think for the next, foreseeable future, they'll be the team to beat. Do I think they're beatable? Yes, but I mean, you're going to have a really, really good team. And I was reminded a couple of years ago that the Titans were up on them 10. My Titans were up on them 10. They came back and beat them pretty good at Arrowhead. So a lot of times it's going to go through Kansas City for the next foreseeable future. As long as those two are together and as long as they can keep that roster intact with the cap situations and different things, yeah, it's going to be a struggle to put anybody else in that AFC Championship game. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Dad, what do you think?
I do. I think I don't know if he's going to eclipse him, but I think it's going to be something similar to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. I think because of his talent, the yardage, the touchdowns, and you put all that together with the talent, maybe he gets 4, maybe 5. He's not going to get 7. He's not going to be in 10 Super Bowls, more than likely. But I think with everything else that he's going to have, I think he'll be side by side and then the debate will go, well, who's the best? And then it'll be depending on who you liked the most. So I think he can get there in that same room with Tom Brady. I don't think he'll surpass him, but I think he can get that same room.
One thing that's interesting, Adam, I'll give it to you in a minute, but it helped Tom. Everybody says being in the AFC West because you had to beat the three stinkers for the longest time, and then you had to win a home game, and then boom. You see, and then LeBron, how did he get so many finals? By being in the East. So I think if Mahomes would be in the NFC, I think he'd have a shot. But it just so happens that 7 out of the top 10 quarterbacks are in the AFC, and 3 of them are in his division, or 2 of them. And so I think it'll be like the every other year, the Mahomes Invitational. He'll get in, he might miss a year. He'll get in, he'll miss a year or two. But that AFC Championship game, they're going to be the number 1 seed in that conference for the foreseeable future. So if you're a Sean Payton watching that game last night, thinking, man, I got to go against this guy for the next 12 years, I would
Twice a year plus.
Twice a year. I mean, I think you got to lean the opposite way. You're not going to outscore him, so you just got to build a defense to beat him. Kind of like a la Warriors, the teams that were stacking up trying to beat the Warriors. But anyway, Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, Joe took the words out of my mouth. I could see this becoming a thing where Mahomes gets 4 or 5, and then people will be debating because he'll likely, assuming he has good health and all that stuff, he'll likely end his career breaking so many of the passing records, but probably won't get to that number 7. That's a high number. But I don't want to do that debate today. I decided I'm not going to answer that question. What I do want to do is just acknowledge how great he is now, appreciate him. And I will say this, already today, he is on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. I think right now, as it stands, he's still got to do some work to pass Joe Montana. And so, I just want to sit back and appreciate the greatness of who he is. He's only been a starter, I think, for 5 years. And to be able to say first ballot Hall of Famer, easy for a guy that's been starting for 5 years, I just want to appreciate that. So we'll see. It'll be fun. I agree with everything you guys said. It'd probably be every other year type thing with Mahomes going forward. And with Reed there, Andy Reid needs to stay in good health too. I've noticed he's lost a lot of pounds. I can't help but think of some of the reason for that is he's like, man, I've got this quarterback here. If I want to etch my name in the history books, I've got to stay healthy enough for myself so I can coach him. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, Mahomes is great. No denying it.
Adam, did you just say he is yet to pass Steve Young?
Well,
he changed it.
Oh, about to say,
Joe Montana.
Don't you be putting Steve Young over my boy Troy and Elway and all that?
Hey, Joseph, let me add to what Adam said. I think the good thing about Mahomes is in years past, he would have tried to do too much and thrown some picks and lost that game. But he dialed it back. He allowed the running game to continue. When they came out in that second half, they started to run the ball. In the past, I think he would have thrown that thing all over the place, got some yardage, but got some interceptions and ended up losing that game. And, that's why the Patriots are so good. They know how to win a game. And you saw the maturation process in his game, and even with Andy to say, hey, look, we see some holes. Let's be patient. Let's keep that running game going. We're going to pass when we need to pass. And you saw them really come together as an offense and even with the defense. And I don't think you would have seen that a few years ago. So not only is all that he's accomplished, but he is really figuring out the game on just how to win it. And that's dangerous for the rest of the league.
One of the fascinating things is as good as Peyton Manning was, he only won to 2 and only went to 3. Now, there is a little bit of Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing. They had to go against Michael Jordan every year. Peyton had to go against Tom every year. So if you take Tom out of the equation, who knows how many Super Bowls Peyton would have been in or how many he would have won. But if you're stacking chips up, he's already got equal to Peyton in this short of a career. So I think everything from here on out now is just legacy for him. I mean, he's going to shatter the throwing records, and he's going to shatter all that. So it'll be fun, if you think back to LeBron's earlier years, and you just could watch it all and the records and all that. That's going to be Mahomes. Now, the interesting thing is if you want to take Peyton and Tom and that comparison 5 years from now, how does it look with Joe Burrow and Mahomes, and do they just kind of trade off who's got the belt year to year? And so a lot of fascinating storylines. Adam, I'm gonna send it back to you for this next one. Looking back, we had a lot of anticipation, different conferences and different players. What would you say is the biggest surprise of this previous NFL season?
Well, my biggest surprise is no surprise to you two. I'm still trying to figure out what happened in Denver. And I think Sean Payton likely will be a solution to whatever problems those were. But, and we were also expecting the Raiders and the Chargers to make that jump too. So, it's like everybody's trying to climb the mountain and someone's going to eventually get to the top. And so even the emergence of Trevor Lawrence, it's like how many great up and coming, very, very young quarterbacks are in the AFC. But if I had to say it, it'd be the Denver Broncos. Pretty disappointing season last year. Pretty surprising in that way. And, let's just be honest. No one saw Jalen Hurts being number 2 in MVP race and to make it to the Super Bowl. And man, he played. You couldn't ask more of him aside from that one fumble, which is really outside of his character anyway. So I think his ascension, I heard a guy say last night at the end of the game, they better start rolling out the money now, making plans with that roster now, because he's going to be worth Pat Mahomes' money very, very soon.
Yep, that's true. I didn't see that one coming. Patrick, what was a surprise to you?
I think just here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes is good. Joe Burrow's, these are all great quarterbacks. But, there's so much parity. There's so many – I don't feel like there was a dominant team that I watched this league that if, like, you line them up, they're going to blow somebody out, 35-7. Like, we just didn't see that. We saw a lot of parity, I think, even of good teams with great quarterbacks. It's interesting. The Titans weren't very good, but, man, they held the Chiefs to, like, 17 points. Defenses, I think you had a lot of teams that were either really great offensively or really good defensively, and there was a lot of parity of how those ended up blending in, meshing together. And so I think next year there's a lot of teams who go into this offseason, if they have a little space and can hit a good draft, feel like, hey, I'm going to probably come back and compete next year and really have a good shot. So
That's good. One surprise to me, and we knew this going in, there was quarterback tiers, but I feel like, and I hate to say it, the Dak Prescotts and the Ryan Tannehills and the Kirk Cousins, there is a hard gap between the top 5 and then the other guys. And the Eagles, it's going to be weird to see if Jalen falls off a little bit or if he comes back the same. But if you take Jalen, the outlier, out, I think you're going to see teams that have guys like those I just named. They have one way to win. They got to dial their quarterbacks back and then build a stacked roster, kind of like Philly did. And so that was one real takeaway, that those second tier, 7 down, even the Kyler Murrays of the world and the Derek Carrs of the world. And I feel like they really took a hit, the Lamar Jacksons of the world. And so that'll be fascinating to see how teams go on moving forward. And Philly's had success having quarterbacks on rookie deals. Well, they're not going to be able to do that with Jalen. They're not going to cut bait. They're going to sign him. So can they still keep a legit roster while having to pay the quarterback? That was something, that whole thing that surprised me. Dad, what's a quick surprise for you?
Derek Carr surprised me. I thought when they got Devontae Adams, I thought they were going to roll. I didn't know if they were going to win the whole thing, of course, but I thought that they'd make a splash. And then a surprise midseason was Mr. Irrelevant. I don't think anybody saw that coming. And it's not one thing that he played okay. He played really good. And I would have loved to seen him play against that Philly team to see what he could actually do. And so he was a surprise, I think, for the league, and excited to see what he can do next year. But, at the end of the day, I have to eat crow. It was Jalen for me. Jalen Hurts, what he did, how he played, and how composed he is. He made every throw last night. And when they needed him, for the most part, he led them to a touchdown or a drive, had a great first half. And so, hey, props to him. He's a scary dude. And because of his character and his composure, and he made all those throws. So from Jalen, from when they lost to Tampa to almost and maybe should have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs, Man, he makes me nervous.
He does. Real quick, our last little take here. We talked about going into next year. Now, the good thing about NFL is free agency and the draft. We'll have plenty of football talk, even though we'll probably shift gears to basketball. But in short, Adam, what's a story that you're already looking forward to or going to be watching next year?
Well, in my bias, I want to see what my Panthers end up doing with the quarterback position. And I say that because the NFC South is just wide open in a way that's unlike maybe one I've seen in recent history, to where no team is like above the others slightly. And so I want to see what a new head coach, a new quarterback, whoever that ends up is, can do, because we've got a pretty good defense. And so if we can work out the offense and get that figured out, create a good culture, it'll be good. But to sound like a broken record, man, I want to see what happens in the AFC West again. We said that, at the beginning of this year. Again, I think Sean Payton's going to do a great job in Denver. The problem is Kansas City Chiefs are still there. They're not, by the way, losing many of their players to free agency. I looked at their roster, who's coming up soon. They'll have to, fill a few spots here and there, but they're still going to be there, and they might even be better. And then you've got the Chargers. Who knows what's going to happen with Oakland? So, yeah, the AFC West again is just going to be, who's the last man standing at the end of the year. Every team likely has a roster that can do well. It's just going to be who makes it to the end.
Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased too. My Titans, like, same thing. What are they going to do at quarterback? What are they going to do offensive line? I mean, they could literally be looking at filling 4 of the starting 5. Or you got people with free agency. You've got people with all sorts of things going on, and they're strapped in the cap. So, I mean, they need a good draft. They've got a new general manager. So I'm excited to see what happens with that.
Well,
all right, so Patrick, let's do this on the air, okay? I don't know if they told you, I'm a huge Liberty Flames guy. I have a Malik Willis jersey. And man, that Sunday night game at Arrowhead, that was like the worst situation for a quarterback that everybody knew is a project. As a Tennessee Titans fan, what is your view of Malik Willis?
Well, I think Malik Willis, I think he definitely has potential. But here's what I think. You look at Jalen Hurts from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. I mean, he's progressed. I think what scares me is they've been really complimentary of Malik Willis's character, his work ethic, all those things. And what ultimately was kind of scary to me is I didn't see a lot of progression. But here's what I'd say too is it's really hard to see progression when your best wideout is coming off a November knee surgery. And then you got Traylon Burks, who I think can be a stud in this league, but he kept getting hurt, hamstring or toe, concussion, just all types of things. And I even saw where there's a statistic where I think Tannehill maybe made 8 starts or whatever, 12 starts, whatever it was. And he threw for over 250 yards almost every time Burks was in the lineup. So I think they're going to have to answer that playmaker question along with O-line. Their defense, though, is stacked. I think even they play good defense even down the stretch without either one of their starting linebackers. Both those guys, one's an unrestricted free agent. Cunningham's $10 million. So I see them cutting, Cunningham, Taylor Lewan. You're under the cap already. And then you look at like Robert Woods is a $10 million, $11 million cap hit. So once you start looking at those things, I think that Tannehill will stay. I think that honestly, if you put Tannehill, Derek Carr together, I think they're about equal. I think that, they restructure him and extend him out for a year or two because quite honestly, Willis is not – I don't know that he's going to be an answer in the next 2 years. I mean, unless something drastically you see him play in the preseason like, wow, man, the light, flipped on. And it could. And you never know. The game coming from a Liberty level, to where NFL is, maybe it slows down for him. Yeah. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see, man. But I'm excited to see what happens. I mean, it's off season and anything can change.
Do you think Vrabel's holding him back because Vrabel's not an offensive guy? And we've seen Trevor Lawrence. Not that Malik Willis is Trevor Lawrence, but they're throwing them out there and they're saying, hey, pass the ball 50 times. Malik Willis plays and he gets 12 attempts. And like you said, with barely any receivers.
I think that Vrabel, it's kind of like this. You look at the teams that you mentioned, the Brock Purdy. So he played good, but he didn't play any better than Tannehill does on a lot of games. But while were they able to win, they had a defense. Vrabel is always going to be defensive minded, but I think you just have to have good, not great, good quarterback play and not turn the ball over. I mean, that's the thing towards the end too. The Titans, Henry started fumbling. This guy went years almost without a fumble. And all of a sudden he's getting a fumble like his last 5 games. He had a fumble. And it's like, oftentimes the teams that are built defensively, run first, throw when necessary. If you don't win the turnover battle or you get behind on the turnover battle, they are toast.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Dad, real quick, what are you looking forward to next year?
I want to see how Trevor Lawrence does. Will he move into that upper echelon? I think he can. I think Peterson's going to do real well as a coach, coaching him up. And so can they make it to that next level? Can he be that next young gun? I think he can, but we'll have to see. Third year, it'll be interesting to see him take that next step.
Adam thought we were going to talk about the fact that the NFC East has had a different divisional winner for 17 years in a row. So it's either going to be us or the Giants, but I won't go there. But I will point to Adam's early favorite, the Bills. I want to see what Josh Allen does. Does he sit back and say, okay, Burrow's passed me, Mahomes has passed me, Trevor Lawrence is on the come up, and does he elevate his game and can he break through, or do they regress and he just – he's a great talent, but they can't figure something out because McDermott might be on the hot seat next year if they can't get out of the divisional round. So a lot of good football stuff. We could keep on talking about it for days, but, man, what a fun NFL season, and we will continue to watch it as offseason begins to kick off. But, hey, let's segue to ministry and leadership. Patrick, we're having you on today, and obviously you are the youth and associate pastor at First Baptist Fort Oglethorpe. You're also the director of Young America Ministries, that is a nonprofit local ministry here in North Georgia. So tell us we picked up your sports bias. So tell us a little bit about your family, about the season that you're planted in the church. And then at the end, I didn't put this on here, but I know you got one. Share with us any preaching blunders that you have that are pretty funny. So go ahead.
My name's Patrick. As you said, I work as the associate pastor of students and evangelism at First Baptist Church, Fort Oglethorpe in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. And I really hate saying that word. It's really hard to say. It's a weird word. For a guy who spent 10 years in speech class, I'm like, did I just not get an easier name like, Chattanooga or Burning Bush or, anything but Fort Oglethorpe? What an odd little word. And so trying to say that, it's fun. Literally, I feel like I have a list, created a list whenever I try and say it. It's great, though. But God planted me there. I've been there about 4.5 years. Love it. Came right before COVID, so COVID was fun. My heart is the community, and so I worked another church for 7 years. God moved me back over, closer to my home, closer to my roots, and Walker into Catoosa County. And my heart is just to see people who honestly are kind of the church doesn't reach real well. We aren't intentional, and we don't handle sometimes the mess real well. That's my heart, is just to see discipleship happen, and ultimately life change happens through heart change, and the gospel brings heart change and life change, and see those two things together. My story was I didn't come to Christ until I was adult, and so, man, nobody wants to deal with that. It's very hard. It's not a culture of discipleship, especially as I was cutting my teeth in life and ministry in the Christian life. So I have a really big heart towards seeing people who maybe just don't fit this. I'm going to be messy, and I come from a rough background, and I didn't know Jesus, and there's addictions and strongholds and struggles. Like, hey, listen, God's greater than all those things. And if you're willing to pursue him, pursue accountability, and really, pursue discipline, then God will work those things out. He'll break the strangleholds and the strongholds, and you'll grow. And so that's kind of my ministry philosophy. So we have a great group of teens and great church there who loves the mission. They're big supporters in community ministry. And that kind of leads into what I do at Young America is I work with at-risk teens and children. A lot of times mobile homes, Section 8 housing, just kind of the places that in that area that just around the 2 or 3 miles of First Baptist Fort O, there is just a ton of those Section 8 housing or trailer parks. And we've been in there I've been working with that organization for the last 12 years. And my wife has been on staff there for 17 years, literally half her life. And so, just that heart and that DNA of just like messiness. But the beauty is we've seen God just do amazing and awesome things through really seeing Young America and First Baptist tied together. Because Young America was great at finding and introducing to the gospel and starting that process for discipleship. But as a parachurch ministry, it always works better if you've got a place to parachurch and plug into church. The church is what God left. Jesus said the gates of hell won't prevail against it. It's what he left, and it's who ultimately is the disciple-making process to see it through completion. Because we realized we were great at, kids and teens, but I want to see these kids stay through college, which our church have a big breadth there. I want to see them through college, through young adulthood, through life, through marriage. I want to see these kids get married, maybe even some go into ministry and life. And we've seen that in the last 4.5 years. And so God is just, I'm blessed to do what I do.
And I'll say too, we talk to a lot of pastors, and not many guys, especially coming out of seminary, a lot of them are afraid to get their hands dirty. And so the type of ministry that you guys do is one that not many could do. And it's so needed in each church. And so you're definitely called to that. Tell us real quick, Patrick, what's your one preaching blunder? Because I know I've heard a few over the years.
I think my best one would be that Paul got locked up and knocked up. And so my wife looked at me and I looked at her. We called eye contact when I said that. And I was like, I meant he was beaten severely and knocked up, like beaten severely with a rod. And that's not the way we use that context today in this day and age. So my eyes talked to my wife and I realized, okay, well, let's just move on then.
Oh, man, that's why I always got to think those things through. That's funny. Well, hey, fellas, today is Monday, and I don't know about you guys, but I've have not done all of my Valentine's Day planning yet. And so in the spirit of Valentine's Day, we've been talking about parenthood past few weeks, but I want to talk a little bit about marriage. And so we're going to talk about reasons, marriages, and we're going to talk about Christian marriages and non-Christian marriages, but we have an insight into the life of Christians. And so we're going to talk about the first question of why many Christian marriages fail. And for years, it was believed that 50% of Christian marriages equal to the number of non-Christian marriages ended in divorce. Now, some recent studies have shown that maybe it's not that high or equal to, but I think we would all agree that it's not where it could be. So before we talk about the good stuff, let's just kind of be honest and give some thought to the not so good. So, Patrick, why do you think so many Christian marriages are struggling, and then in the church and in divorce?
Man, I have a unique perspective on this, I think, than a lot of people, because I got saved as a young adult. And as I was plugged into church, what happens is you're 23, 24, and you know what people are doing at that age? They're all dating and get married. Like everybody wants to be married. The girls are like 21, 22. They're looking like, let's get married. Like I'm, feeling like an old maid. I'm 22 and not married. And here's what I figured out though, is because of that, sometimes I watched girls who were friends of mine. They would date someone and this person, I'm a Christian, I'm in church, but they really weren't growing Christians, if that makes sense. And Paul, when he speaks of being unequally yoked, is speaking spiritually unequally yoked. That is not, to me, I take that application a step further. That is not just, hey, am I saved, and going to heaven? Am I growing in my relationship? And I think sometimes because people can look at that verse and say, well, that's just really the baseline. But I always challenge my teenagers and my young adults that you need to see this person like increasing and becoming more sanctified and growing in their relationship. Because if I'm just being honest, and I'm going to be a negative Nancy here, I preached the 7 sons of Sceva out of the book of Acts the other day, and they were people who were using Paul's name just to get ahead in life and Jesus. And I said, I've been in churches long enough to see that dudes who they want a good girl, they want a girl they can trust and will raise their kids and bring their kids to church, they don't want Jesus. And that's where way too many people have fallen hook, line, and sinker. They have not gotten to know the stories, the testimony, and what is God doing in their life today. Because salvation happens in a moment, but it's not something where you say, I was saved 20 years ago. How is God at work? Where's the linear process of discipleship and sanctification happening in your heart and life that we can tangibly see, and you're bearing fruit today? That is true salvation and sanctification. And I think sometimes people just settle in life, settle for safety, settle for comfort, and settle for someone who's may in turn either not be a Christian or is not going to be able to grow and lead their families in the Christian life.
That's good. Adam, response to that, answer to the question, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what Patrick said, particularly about, these stats and these polls. And you mentioned it, Joseph, like, what do you mean by Christian? Do we mean Christian by you affiliate with Christianity? You used to go to church when you were growing up? And then, do you even count if there's one spouse that's a Christian? Do you count that as a Christian couple? And then, as Patrick said, beyond that, to what extent do you mean? So I think you got to sort that out first. And I'm not saying that there aren't strong Christian couples that do get divorced, but just to be clear on that. But I think it always goes back to, and I hate to sound a little bit cliche, it's the world, the flesh, and the devil. And in no specific order, the devil wants to destroy homes primarily. And the primary way to do that is through destroying marriage. And so we've got that against us. And then you throw in the world and just the way that marriage on its face has been so adjusted and twisted. The meaning of marriage, what is the purpose of marriage? These things that we're kind of brought up in. And even if we're in church and we know the difference, the influence is just so constant in our minds that many Christians have kind of a pseudo-Christian / pagan perspective of what marriage even is. And many of them not even knowing that. And then, of course, the flesh. One specific thing I would think of, I know you men have probably heard this, is that so many marriages, I don't know the percentage on it, but so many, when they get to go into court trying to figure out custody or who's going to get what, it goes back to social media, goes back to the phones. And so what many Christians are running into is maybe you're not struggling with pornography. Maybe you're not, overly exposed to women in the way that we commonly think of as lust. But even, what social media does, it always is presenting you with other people. We're far more exposed to people than we have ever been. So what a lot of Christians end up doing is comparing their spouse and their life, their marriage, to all of these other people they're seeing on a daily basis. And we know what social media looks like. Everything is perfect. Everything is, filtered and cropped. And so discontentment can settle into the heart of a Christian in the context of their marriage. So, you just got to be radars up all the time about what the devil may be doing and how susceptible our flesh is to these temptations.
That's good. Dad, being the elder statesman on the call today and doing a lot of premarital counseling and a lot of in-marriage counseling and mentoring a lot of people, what are some observations you've had over the years?
Good marriages are all about intentionality. And when the Bible talks about marriage, it gives the picture of two becoming one. And I think when a marriage can really see that picture and understand that picture and know what the Bible is trying to demonstrate, then there should be an understanding of the importance of growing your marriage. And so life happens and we have all these responsibilities. And by nature, going back to what Adam said, we're sinful, the world, the flesh, all these things, the enemy is trying to tear us apart and take two that should become one back to two again, where it's my desires, my wants. And if those things aren't met by the other, then I will go meet them ourselves. And so I talk a lot about being selfless, not rather than selfish communication. But, if you're not trying to work and better yourself, your marriage is not going to be better. So it all really starts back to who you are and what you're bringing to the table as two begin to mesh into one. But once that happens, and I think more about Pam than I think about myself, and she thinks more about me, then herself, and we come together and Jesus is first and we're growing together spiritually, then it's kind of like a beautiful dance. If you see two individuals and they know their roles and they know where each other are going because they have the same mindset, then you have two people come together and you have a leader. And there's nothing more beautiful than seeing two people dancing in rhythm and sequence together. Beautiful. But then when you have two individuals and they don't know who the leader is, and one's going one way and one's going another, it's an absolute mess. Well, that's a picture of what marriage is. And so when I see marriages that are doing really well, they understand it's not something that they just do and leave it alone. It's something that they grow in, and they look at down deep of themselves and they evaluate how I'm doing as a husband or a wife, and what am I contributing, and what are some of the things that need to die to self, and to make sure that I am fully in alignment with the Lord. And so the Lord brings the two together, and constantly working, constantly evaluating, constantly looking at intention, praying together. And let me just throw that out there. Very few Christian couples do you see pray together. So for some reason, that's just something that they don't like. They'll read the Bible together, they'll talk about different things, they'll talk about finances, but those intimate moments spiritually, they have a hard time doing that. And so going back, I'll finish it with this: intentionality. If you want to, and matter of fact, it's not about are Christian marriages divorcing or not. It's, are they presenting the picture that God wanted them to present as husband and wife, two becoming one to the world? So it's about having a marriage that's thriving and showcasing the love of Jesus between a husband and wife that God created.
Before we continue, I think too, the prayer element, I feel like a lot of guys, especially in Southern culture, the men are typically laid back and they let the wife, do the talking or sometimes make the decisions as they come in at the end. But I feel like men struggle being vulnerable in front of their wives. Like, even for me, I can preach or pray in front of 10,000 people, not even think about it. But I get very, I'm working on this, but I get very self-conscious when I pray in front of my wife, which she is very carefree, doesn't even act like I'm there. But for whatever reason, I think men struggle not only being emotionally vulnerable, but spiritually vulnerable. But it is a powerful posture when you have to humble yourself and submit to Christ in front of and with her. And so much value in it, but definitely an interesting thought. So let's shift gears. We talked about the struggle. Patrick, I'll pass this one to you. In your experience, we can all personalize this. If you had to boil it down to one secret that you have learned to having a godly marriage and what has worked for you guys, and you can add more to it, but specifically one thing, what would you say?
I think every marriage needs a mission statement and non-negotiables. Like, here's a mission statement, and here's how our vision and disciplines drive towards this mission statement. So you funnel everything through mission statement as a couple, and I think that keeps you on track. It gives you accountability. The same thing in churches. If it doesn't drive the mission, then we're just not driving it.
That's good. Adam, what do you think?
You've probably heard before, a good marriage is two people that have become very good at forgiving another person. And, it goes back to what we've said already, that, a marriage, as beautiful as it is two sinners coming together. And the quicker you realize that, the easier marriage is going to be. I think within the context of marriage in our culture, it's this idea that, my spouse is going to fulfill me. My spouse is going to meet all of my emotional and physical needs. And for the guys, we want a trophy wife. For the ladies, they want, a hopeless romantic, Twilight Edward type guy that's just always bubbling over, with emotions. And I think when we lay those expectations on our spouses, even if we have conversations about this kind of thing before we get married, if it's not ingrained in us, it's not a pattern of thinking for us, it's very dangerous. And so, getting good at forgiving one another is huge. It goes a long way. It cuts down on arguments. And even if there are arguments, it allows time to get past them and move past them, as opposed to holding on to them, feelings of bitterness. And let's just mention this. Joseph mentioned that guys aren't as open and vulnerable as they often could or should be. One thing that us guys do is we shut down emotionally in the context of our marriage when things are tough. I think there's a physiological reason we do that, because we don't want to harm our spouse by something we might say. But at the same time, I think, and this is something that I've always had to, wrestle with and grow in, I don't want to use silence as a weapon or a form of revenge against my wife if something's happened or something's going off in our marriage. And so men just have to like move past that pride of I'm okay, everything's all right. And even if they're not, just stick it out a little bit longer, they'll eventually fizzle out and we'll be okay again. You've got to be, as Joe said, intentional. You've got to address problems. And I think the quicker we do that, the better our marriages will be.
Dad, before I pass it to you, I'd say if you had to boil it down, I mean, it's the spiritual side, because if you have a great faith life together and you're both loving Jesus more daily together and you're growing spiritually, a lot of the problems will take care of themselves. Communication, love tanks not being full. And so probably the thing I love most about my wife and our relationship is growing toward the Lord together. It's not a one-sided thing. It's not an equally yoked thing. And her love for Christ pushes and challenges me. And I think when you have that priority set, and for families, that can be, maybe mom taking faith more seriously than dad. And when dad steps up to the plate and they're both not only committed spiritually, but to the church and discipleship, and then their kids follow suit, everything else falls into place. And so many times I feel like we try and fix the problems that are second and third tier, when really it just boils down to, man, you're not spiritually healthy. And so for me, that's what I would say. That's where I would put all my eggs in that basket and then let everything flow out of that. But Dad, you've got a lot more experience than me on this. What is a secret that over the years you and Mom, and I'll say this, you guys have been a mentor couple to many, many, many over the years. What's something that you have learned and try to show to others?
There was a time then Pam was real sick and she had a bad cold, and we were trying to sleep and she was coughing, hacking, about 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, man, I am not going to get sleep. I said that I am not going to get sleep. And then the Lord said, aren't you supposed to love your wife the way Christ loved the church? And man, that made a profound impact on me. So much so that at that moment, I got up at 2:00 in the morning, went out to the store and got her some medicine. And it really taught me that in marriage, we have to evaluate and adjust. It sounds simple and very practical, but that has helped me to make sure and to embed, going back to that mission statement, we're supposed to love our spouse the way Christ loved the church. And so for me, I constantly looking at myself and evaluate and adjust, because we can shift gears. We are like an out of line car, and we can start drifting towards it's all about me. And so for me, it is constantly evaluating my motives, constantly looking back and looking at myself. What type of husband am I being? How am I loving her the way Christ loved the church? And, am I fulfilling what God said of the role of the husband is? And so that's something that I constantly do. And in doing so, I think that has helped with Pam doing the same thing. And so if we're both each looking at ourselves and then coming together, we get the best of both worlds. And so sometimes it's just the most practical, again, going back to intentionality.
Patrick, if there's spiritual crowns in heaven for going out to the store at 2 a.m. for your wife, I think you and my dad would have a whole bed of crowns. What do you think?
Yes, for sure. He was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, 4 a.m. My son is he's not, or no, my daughter, she is coughing and hacking. I'm just like, I give up. I'm not getting any rest till I get this medicine in her. So we got the Mucinex kids, and man, just knocked her out. So I was thinking.
Yeah, well, very cool. Well, hey, value your marriages out there. Prioritize it. Go on dates. Go out to dinner tonight. Grow together spiritually in your church and in your home. And it is an investment that you will not regret. Well, fellas, I appreciate y'all coming on today. We will be back in a week. Everybody have a great Valentine's Day, and see you later.